says, hello and welcome to the movieboozer.com virtual pub. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and I'm joined today by Bill Arsenault.
Hey.
And Bill Leon.
Hello.
And I'm not sure if we'll be joined by Hawk Ripjaw later, but he may pop in. Some very interesting movie news came up today that just had to be discussed.
It came up like literally hours before this podcast went live. Just the last 2 hours.
To put it in context, I've been asleep all day. I work a night job. It's not like I just sleep all day, but I've been asleep all day, so I just woke up about an hour ago, and I assumed this had broken hours ago. But apparently this is really fresh news.
It kind of trickled in a little bit all day, but finally the main decision was made about 4 or 5 hours ago, I think. And I'll just go ahead and start. Those of you who haven't, who've been under a rock and maybe haven't been reading the news.
I wouldn't call this is more entertainment news. I guess it does sort of deal with global politics, but at the same time, this is about a movie.
Well, this is about the movie The Interview, and I'm actually hearing a bit of an echo on someone's side. Does someone not have their microphone in, or headphones in? I don't mean to interrupt us, but...
I have headphones on. I think we all have headphones on.
Yeah, I got headphones on.
Oh, okay.
Can you still hear it?
When I'm talking, I can hear it a little bit on someone's end, but it doesn't matter. I didn't mean to segue out of that too fast, but with The Interview, basically what has happened, the Sony leaks, which has been just all over the news lately, were tied unofficially to North Korea. The nation of North Korea allegedly hacked into Sony.
Well, actually, no. We should clarify. The government of North Korea supposedly instigated the hacks. They didn't actually do it. They just kind of outsourced it to someone else or got the ball rolling, supposedly.
We don't know whether they paid someone to do it or whether they actually had people in country doing it. One way or another, the movie The Interview is, which we've said this before, a movie that is literally about a comedy about two people killing a standing leader of a foreign nation. Which
specifically a foreign nation we have bad blood with right now.
Which, of course, let me put it this way. I've always thought that this was clearly a shock value conceit to say, let's just kill a leader. Let's just kill a world leader. Not only is it a world leader, but a world leader of a foreign nation. And not only a foreign nation, but probably the foreign nation with which we have the most unsteady relationship.
Well, to be fair, I just want to say this. Of all the world leaders we have, Kim Jong-un is someone's spoiled son.
Right. So, he's ripe for satire.
Yeah.
And I am by no means.
In fact, what was it? What was we were watching? Ricky O and the son of the warden.
Yeah.
That's who Kim Jong-un reminds me of.
Yeah.
Ricky O, the story of Ricky. Yeah, that movie is worth mentioning many times.
The kid with the big lollipop or whatever it is.
Yes, that's who Kim Jong-un reminds me of.
And I'm even going to agree with you, but I do want to say this straight up that it's a dangerous proposition if you're going to do something like that and outright. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know that the movie is supposed to be a comedy, but you are playing with fire when literally the comedy is saying, let's go kill Doug Shefsky. And if you don't know what that reference is to, you probably didn't watch the Ben Stiller show.
Well, this isn't unprecedented. I mean, other movies in the past have tried killing off world leaders or doing something funny with world leaders, like Hot Shots Part 2 with Saddam Hussein.
Isn't Saddam also in one of the Naked Guns?
He might be. I know in the first Naked Gun they had all those Axis of Evil type world leaders.
Right, the opening scene with all of the stand-in world leaders. But here's the thing: those movies did it. in a very in an outrageous parody-like way that in a way could have been very easily interpreted as just being a parody of just the concept of spy films and not really meant to be directly threatening. The Interview is a movie based around the concept of let's go kill a world leader.
Right.
Yeah, but isn't that the same thing though? I mean, isn't this movie? We don't really know. I haven't seen The Interview, and probably won't be seeing The Interview for a while.
We have not seen The Interview, and so that must be said. But what I'm saying is the way it's being advertised, at the very least, is exactly that. And I think that it's, first of all, before I get into the socio-political issues involved, I want to say that it rings of shock humor and it rings of kind of desperation to me that to make a comedy edgy now, they're deciding to just outright get involved in global politics and say, you know what, let's kill a world leader. It lacks class, and I'm not saying the movie is funny or not funny, but it is a classless thing to do, and it does make us as a country look kind of bad by saying, you're the country that has a bunch of people who just who want to say, okay, we can just kill this person and make a joke out of it.
Why not?
We don't know if they actually kill him in the movie or not.
Correct.
I think there's actually someone spoiled it a little bit, but I'm not going to get into that. Like some kind of explosion, some funny incident that was like incidental. Like
wait, no, I did. Yes, you're right. I heard that same news, and
I don't know if that's true, but
from what I've heard, he does die in the movie. Actually, now that I remember,
which is actually kind of funny to me that they would actually go that far. But
now it is not unprecedented that North Korea is the subject of satire. Obviously, Team America World Police, Kim Jong-il is featured in that film.
He was pissed about that.
Absolutely. This, though, is unprecedented in that this is the first time that there's been a major cyber attack against a film distribution and film studio, specifically to suppress one of their projects. And now that I've made my criticism towards and my reservations towards The Interview, my other reservations is I honestly think the trailers look kind of bad. But that's just
speaking as a reviewer.
Right, and I'm not even going to talk that until I've seen the movie, and now to enter into my next point. I'm definitely going to do whatever I can to see The Interview, and as soon as possible, and pay to see it. There's a reason for this. Regardless of the artistic quality of the film and the political reasons involved, the tactics which were used by the hackers, and which are being used by the hackers, amount to nothing more than an act of economic terrorism and threatened terrorism in the form of their recent threats to bomb movie theaters that actually show the film, which is the reason why it is being pulled from theaters.
I think it has to do with, and maybe you guys heard about this, it was like last week, the GOP, Guardians of Peace, put out a statement saying that if they didn't pull The Interview, they were going to leak more stuff, and I think it was purely a financial decision.
So you're thinking maybe when they said the 9/11 type attack, they meant 9/11 of cyber attacks, not 9/11 we're going to bomb.
No, I'm sure that's what they meant, but I'm saying they were also talking about releasing more emails, probably stolen movies, scripts, whatever they have, and it just seems a little weird to me that before that Sony was sticking to their guns about like freedom of speech and all this stuff, and now it's like, oh no, we're pulling it.
Well, I think what pushed them over the edge was in the matter of a couple of days, and then over the course of several hours today, many of the major theater chains decided to pull the movie from their lineup, which meant only smaller independent theaters would be showing it, and I know for a fact there's a couple theaters in New Orleans that were raring to go to show this movie. Like, hell yeah, we'll be the only theaters to show it, whatever, you know.
Mhm.
And you know, they could have made a killing off of it, literally and figuratively, you know. Whatever that means. I don't mean it to imply anything bad, but I meant because they were killing Kim Jong-un, not because someone could get killed for watching this movie. But
It's worth noting, by the way, that I know you're talking about, you know, threatened leaks and such. There were threats to blow up movie theaters, and
Right,
this is
right.
the
And
reason-
yes,
this is the reason why the theaters finally decided to stop, and why Sony decided no longer to distribute the film to theaters is because, can you imagine? I mean, from a personal level, yes, I believe I want to go see this movie because it's being suppressed. It has, I think, it's right that the film gets seen.
Well, that's another thing I wanted to bring up is that you're creating a black market for this movie by making it this unattainable taboo thing.
And idealistic as that is, though, unfortunately, it also means that this movie's probably never going to be shown in a movie theater. And the reason being is simply because it would be, imagine the risk you're taking. If even one incident happens at one movie theater, you are now responsible in the eyes of the public for having spurred on that incident. And so they cannot. They can't do it.
yeah, but we shouldn't be afraid to do it. We should just do it, in my opinion. You know?
It sounds good to say from our perspective.
I know. From our perspective, it's a lot to say, and
Imagine the liability, though. Even if these threats to bomb a theater are completely not.
bullshit.
Yeah, right.
I got to compromise. We shouldn't be putting innocent lives in danger. We should be putting Seth Rogen and James Franco's lives on the lines, or whoever wrote the script. Just have them stand outside the theater with a shoot me sign or something. Like put their lives on the line because they're the ones.
Actually, you know what? That they might end up doing that. There's been a lot of people on Twitter saying, "Wouldn't it be great if Seth Rogen and James Franco came to a theater and actually performed the movie live?"
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
That'd be an excellent publicity stunt right there. Why not push it even further? You know.
I would sign a waiver. I would go to a theater and sign a waiver pledging not to sue Sony. And I would go see the movie simply because at this point, even if the movie's terrible, and honestly, I would not be. Even if the movie is terrible, though.
You just reminded me of that
It's
Mr. Show sketch. There's a Mr. Show sketch about this deadly roller coaster and how you have to sign a waiver to get on it. This is like the deadly film that you have to sign a waiver to see.
Mhm.
This is so ridiculous that we're even having this conversation just because some jerk said he was going to blow up every movie theater. Like that's like the most unrealistic thing ever. I'm a huge movie buff, and I like to think that I have good ability to get information on movie theaters and where they're located and stuff like that. You know, if I'm in town somewhere and I can Google it and everything. But even I can't find every movie theater ever. You know, sometimes Google will say this theater's closed now, this theater's open, and it can be confusing. So the logistics of performing such a terrorist attack are just completely bullshit. It can't happen. Even one theater. I mean, goodness gracious. You know,
Well, the logistics, I think, if anything, the Colorado shooting proved
that's
probably
probably
a movie theater not as difficult as one might imagine.
it's not as difficult as one, but I mean in the vein that they were implying. You know, either by using planes because they said they referenced 9/11, or by using bombs. But and we don't even know if these people are foreign or if they're from America, or we don't really know.
It is worth noting that according to CNN, I actually just went to CNN about 2 seconds ago over talking. The U.S. government is actually getting ready to hold a press conference that is going to directly point the blame at North Korea for this hack.
Huh.
And so what that says to me is that this is if they are going to make an announcement like that, we're pretty much assured that that's who caused this, and
Not necessarily. I mean, if you recall correct, I'm not trying to skirt the North Korea of any wrongdoing or anything like that. But remember, Colin Powell went to the UN and said we have to attack Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction, and it turned out there were none.
Which is understandable, but that said, I don't think that this is.
In this case, this is probably correct in this case. But I'm just saying, I'm just saying. But yeah, I'd be willing to bet it probably was North Korea behind it in some manner. And but I have no idea what would exactly be our government response to it. Just more sanctions?
Well, as far as our government response to this hacking incident, well,
just
officially,
find the hackers.
Officially, sanctions may be something that could be used. Unofficially, I'm sure we have our own hackers hacking the living shit out of them every day.
Ooh.
So.
Yeah, we're gonna hack your movies, Kim Jong-un.
We're gonna get a copy of.
Have you seen Pulgasari?
No.
Have you heard of Pulgasari?
No. What is it?
Pulgasari is the North Korean kaiju film. I don't know if you've heard the story of the South Korean filmmaker who was abducted by Kim Jong-il and forced to make a movie. This was one of his films that they forced him to make.
Yeah, I think we talked about this briefly once. It sounds awfully familiar now. Yeah.
Why don't somebody make a movie about that? That sounds amazing.
It is actually quite amazing.
Yeah.
That would make a great movie, right? Like a dictator kidnaps a filmmaker and forces him to make some idiotic shit.
Well, it was dramatized to a minimal extent. Do you remember that cartoon series on Comedy Central about Robert Evans from the early 2000s? One episode actually covered that. In one episode, Robert Evans was kidnapped and forced to make movies for Korea. But anyway, yeah, Pulgasari, I'm going to go ahead and read the synopsis because you're going to love this. In feudal Korea, during the Goryeo dynasty, a king controls the land with an iron fist, subjecting the peasantry to misery and starvation. An old blacksmith who is sent to prison creates a tiny figurine of a monster made out of rice. When it comes into contact with the blood of the blacksmith's daughter, the creature springs to life, becoming a giant metal-eating monster named Pulgasari. The evil king becomes aware that there's a rebellion in the country.
It sounds like someone's name, Paul Gasari.
Like an actor, like Paul Giamatti, Paul Gasari, like some guy who's like related to Paul Sorvino. Yeah.
The movie ends with a communist uprising led by a kaiju monster. I actually watched this. My good friend and co-founder, Movie Boozer, Zach, provided me with a copy some years back. It ends with a communist uprising against a feudal monarchy led by a giant kaiju. Now, how awesome is that?
Yeah, well, I'm a little confused here. Like, okay, the daughter's blood infused with the rice doll, and turn it into a giant metal monster. Was that because of the iron in her blood?
Maybe. Maybe
Now,
they just.
I know I'm getting into stupid details here, but that kind of threw me off guard a little bit. That and the fact that the story is about an uprising against a government-type system that is currently in place in North Korea. So it's like, it's kind of funny. They were like, oh, it's because it's a communist uprising, it's okay, but we instilled the very thing that now we're making a movie about. I don't know. It's just funny to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The story of this filmmaker, by the way, who was kidnapped, his name is Shin Sang-ok, and I think it's Oak. It's okay, so I'm sure it's not.
Was he given credit for the movie, like for directing it?
He is credited. I don't know if he was credited, in North Korea, but.
Oh, okay. Like our fearless leader did the movie.
It says here in 1978. An actress named Choi Eun-hee, recently divorced from the filmmaker, was kidnapped in Hong Kong and taken to North Korea. And when director Shin traveled to Hong Kong to investigate, he was kidnapped as well. The kidnappings were on the orders of Kim Jong-il, who wanted to establish a North Korean film industry and sway international opinion regarding the views of the Workers' Party of Korea.
This sounds an awful lot like some kind of what was that movie that Ben Affleck did? They went on Argo. Sounds like an Argo type plot, but funnier.
He
Yeah.
he directed 7 films with Kim Jong-il acting as the executive producer. The best known is Pulgasari because of its giant monster,
Yeah.
which is similar to Godzilla, of course. They escaped 8 years into captivity, and yeah, how amazing is that?
That's a story that needs to be told on film right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know what? The South Korean film industry is a wonderful, burgeoning film industry. And I think that they need to make something like that happen. If it hasn't already, for all we know, it could have, and it just didn't get,
Yeah, yeah. Well, we should look into that. See what's up with that. I don't know. What do you think would be the creative response to the Sony hack? Like, do you think obviously South Park is going to have to parody this? It'll probably be next week's episode or something, because they churn those out like so quickly.
Well, have you guys been paying attention to South Park this season?
Not at all.
Not really. No.
They might be done already, and B, they've changed up the structure very significantly, which is where they're only doing 10 episodes a year, and at least with this season they just did, there's continuity from episode to episode in a really strange way, but it all kind of works. Like, they've obviously been taking a lot of inspiration from these long-running TV shows that have these unfolding stories and shit. So that is something they've implemented in South Park.
So
anyway,
yeah, that'll be difficult to tie in. Well, they could always pull crab people, of course.
They could, yeah. I'm not saying they probably. I don't know. It just seems like maybe they're trying to get away from that, like people expecting them to do that sort of thing, like just jump on the current news story.
Well, remember they did that Imagination Land, which was sort of like it was a 3-parter, but it was also like released as its own movie.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they could do something along those lines. I don't know. That would have to be down the line because I'm assuming the season's almost over. So, but what do you think, other than South Park, would be the creative response, maybe from Hollywood? Like, do you think they would come out with like a movie to counter the North Korean thing and be like, hey, fuck you, we're gonna make our own movies anyways? Or
I think
maybe we can kidnap a North Korean filmmaker and force them to make big budget Hollywood blockbusters.
Are there North Korean filmmakers? I don't know.
Of course, the propaganda industry. I'm sure they're, they don't have much of a budget, but let's see what happens if you give them a Michael Bay.
If we can kidnap a North Korean filmmaker, we might as well kidnap Kim Jong-un while we're at it, or attempt to.
I don't know. I think the tit for tat layer of it would be a little bit more fun.
Like, we would go out of our way to not do the obvious thing, but to kidnap a filmmaker and be like, no, we want you to make our own film. Okay.
And it has to be like a trick crazy kaiju style film that just happens to have pro-democracy slant towards the plot. Like the movie ends with like a giant kaiju signing the Emancipation Proclamation or something.
And Jimmy Stewart comes out and he's like, God damn it, Mr. Kaiju, you can't do this to the American people.
He flies over in the spirit of St. Louis shouting, which way to Ireland? Which, if you haven't seen Spirit of St. Louis, that's the one interesting part of that entire boring movie, by the way.
Which way to Ireland? That's funny.
The way he shouts it, it's just...
Well, because he's got that voice that's very clearly James Stewart,
oh, yeah.
Which way to Ireland?
Mr. Potter?
Mr. Potter.
I forget if it was Saturday Night Live or South Park, but somebody just had him like cussing out Mr. Potter, like, Mr. Potter, you're a bitch.
That's South Park.
You know who really kind of began that joke? Dana Carvey perfected the Jimmy Stewart's funny when he curses kind of thing.
That's why I confused it with Saturday Night Live. I knew I had that image of Dana Carvey in my head.
But I remember it was the South Park episode with Charles Manson.
Yes, it is.
The Christmas episode, yeah.
Merry Christmas, Charlie Manson. That's a classic.
Yeah, that's a classic.
So we're kind of jumping all over here, but the point we're trying to convey is that there's sort of mixed messages here. On one hand, we understand why the theaters can't take a risk showing the movies. They're trying to avoid the chance of getting sued, if something bad were to happen,
Or
and it would be bad
fatalities.
PR. But on the other hand,
And it would just be bad for human life too.
Yeah.
oh, absolutely, of course. But the theater, I guarantee you, the thoughts on their mind is not,
It's not that, yeah.
because I'm pretty sure everyone has the same reaction that we do initially, in that, you know what, fuck them, let's just show the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But that could have some bad some bad results. And so, honestly, I think that if this movie gets released to DVD, it's probably going to be fairly successful as a straight-to-DVD release.
I don't know if I don't see that happening unless for some reason it happens like years down the line and Sony's just like, remember that thing that happened a few years ago? Here it is on DVD. No, what I see this leaking. I see somebody somewhere getting a hold of this and leaking it onto the internet.
If the studios really want to send a fuck you to the North Korean hackers for this, what they will do is leak it for free and make sure everyone in the world can see this movie. And basically force it down their throats and say, guess what? Only a couple countries were going to have this distributed in the theaters, and then it was really just, we are going to officially sanction this leak, and we are going to spam you with it. And
I just put up on YouTube.
Yeah, that would be great. That is exactly what they should do, but they won't. And I know that because
this movie costs money and they got to recoup.
Well, that's the thing. Well, yeah, they just lost a shit ton of money, and they're going to continue losing money because one of their bigger releases for the end of the year got leaked.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, I totally lost my train of thought. Never mind.
But Christmas release is big business, and in particular, the comedy film release. I mean, this movie was in direct competition with Hot Tub Time Machine 2, which it was anyone's game as to which one of those was going to come out on top in the counter programming, the comedy spot. Hot Tub Time Machine 2 just took it.
Yeah, because it has no competition now.
It could be a piece of complete dog shit, and it'll still.
It probably is. Yeah.
It probably is. I mean, I honestly didn't see the first one, so I can't speak to it. But
oh, okay. I was going to say, do you guys want to talk about the trailer? But it sounds like you guys hated it.
Yeah, I saw the trailer. I didn't particularly like it.
I saw both.
The new trailer's a little better. I will say that much.
I saw both versions of the trailer, and honestly, I just expected. I got more than what I expected out of it. I think that there's potential to what they've shown me, which again, that it could turn around and I could not like the movie. But
I got the Red Band trailer when I went to see Top 5, and it was actually really interesting. I will give him that. But the fact is, it was interesting, but it felt like one of those trailers that may have given the farm away.
Okay.
I mean, I will say this: you don't really get too much of Adam Scott in the trailer, and he's supposed to be the new fourth lead.
There was a good amount of them in the Red Band. Not a huge amount, but enough. That said, I think we've talked over the interview. I keep wanting to say the internship, but the interview.
Could you imagine if all this was over the internship?
That would be hilarious.
That would be like somehow worse, because that movie takes no chances.
That would mean that Google was hacked. Ugh.
Oh God.
We would all be screwed. We're doing this over a Google Hangout.
Or no, Google would be the ones. Google would be the ones hacking, right? Because they would be North Korea in that situation.
But the movie actually is in a good light towards Google, right? I mean, that's the whole plot, is that they go get a job at Google, and it's nice, and it's fun, it's hip, that kind of thing.
Wait, is the entire plot of the internship about a dude from North Korea who gets a job at Google? Because if that was the plot, I would see that movie.
It should be the plot.
A dude from North Korea getting a job.
Look how amazing! They have a cafeteria. They have food.
They have driverless carriages. I mean, cars.
I never have to go home. I want to work here for the rest of my life.
Then it becomes like a geopolitical movie where he decides to get a visa to stay in America, but North Korea wants his ass back, and he becomes like a big figure,
Wow, we've already written a better movie than The Internship, and it only took us, what, 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and segue out then into, because I did drop that I saw top five recently. Top five, first of all, have either of you seen or heard of it?
Heard
Well,
about it.
I heard of it, yeah, of course, but not seen it.
Chris Rock, as a filmmaker, has been hit and miss, and mostly miss, I would argue. It's unfortunate because I think he's an immensely talented stand-up comedian. I think that is by far his strongest suit.
Well, I will say, like, him as a script writer, or maybe just, like, adding jokes to scripts, CB4 and Pootie Tang are both quite fun.
I'll give you that. And Pootie Tang is fascinating just because Louis C.K. wrote it, and who the hell
And
heard
directed
of Louis
it.
C.K.? Yeah, and directed it. Who the hell heard of Louis C.K. in 2001? Most people had no clue that he was someone who existed. So
Unless you saw Dr. Katz.
Ah, yeah.
right.
He was on that.
But his first film, Head of State, when I was young and I saw it for the first time in 2003, I admit that I didn't hate it. But who here has seen Head of State?
I know the movie. I know it because at the time they shot footage at a TNA wrestling event, and I was kind of into TNA at the time, so TNA wrestling, not TNA the tits and ass, but they shot footage there, and I was like, oh, Chris Rock has a new movie. That's kind of cool, because I had seen that other movie he did where he goes to heaven and then
Down to Earth.
then he gets reincarnated, right, Down to Earth, and I thought that was relatively funny.
He didn't direct Down to Earth, but he was the writer and executive producer and heavily involved in the project.
Yeah.
It really does. Honestly, the directorial style of Down to Earth and Head to State are very similar. So I honestly thought that he had directed Down to Earth for the longest time. But and then the other film, I never saw this. The other film he directed, I Think I Love My Wife.
Yeah, never seen it.
All I heard was that the critics who hated it really hated it, and then there were a handful of defenders of it who were also incredibly vehement, but it was a small group.
Mm-hmm.
What intrigued me about the film is it was co-written between Chris Rock and Louis C.K.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I haven't seen it. I might see it at some point. I don't have anything to say about it, really. But top five is really the cinematic equivalent of a Chris Rock comedy routine of a movie. It really goes through all of those levels, and even the dialogue, for the most part, and this is something that's endemic of all Chris Rock movies, I've noticed, is taken right out of stand-up styling.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I mean, Louis C.K. even admitted that the entire first season of Louis was really just each episode was a different comedy bit of his expanded into an episode. Later he built upon that, but top five is not a perfect movie. It has some flaws dramatically. I think occasionally Chris Rock kind of punches down a little bit and makes jokes that are a little bit, I think, beneath his talent.
Oh, like Hammy Time?
That actually, as cheesy as that is, and in the fact that it's in all the trailers, that actually works in the context of the movie.
Okay.
There's one scene in particular that the movie makes fun of a gay person in a way that is a little bit, I would say, it feels like it makes sense in the context of the fact that Chris Rock was at his peak as a stand-up comedian in the 90s. Mm-hmm. But I think we've evolved as a society past the kind of humor that he uses for this scene, and I don't want to go into it too heavy. It's a brief scene in which one of the characters describes how she found out that her boyfriend was gay, and when she found out her boyfriend was gay and cheating on her, she punished him by sticking a tampon with hot sauce up his ass.
That what? Okay.
Yeah, which
it was
meant to be a joke, and to me it felt more like a hate crime.
Did John Waters step in and
Felt more like a hate crime. John Waters would have made it funny. He would have spun it somehow. Like okay, we're now making fun of the person perpetrating the act, not the perpetrator.
The way it's told in the movie is it's supposed to be an act of vengeance against a cheating boyfriend, but I think the form of that vengeance was a little too oriented towards the guy's gay side, and so it didn't feel like a
like if he had been cheating on her with a woman, she probably wouldn't have put a tampon with hot sauce up his ass.
Right, and the way the guy portrays it is awfully. It felt that was probably the low point of the film. The rest of the film, there's small moments here and there that hint at that. Honestly, I think it's been hard for Chris Rock to really get out and into the war zones and really do stand-up comedy, and really hone his stand-up comedy because he's too famous of an individual. People, I think, tend to give him a little bit more credit when he's performing. So I think maybe it's worn on him, and maybe he hasn't evolved out of his old stuff. It's like if you've ever seen Eddie Murphy's comedy specials from the 80s, Jesus.
Those are still funny to me.
They're funny, but some of the routines border on, well, not even border, cross the line into just straight out hate speech. And it's Sam Kinison. I've one of Sam Kinison's albums from the 80s, and he has this whole bit about basically ripping on gay people for fucking a monkey and giving AIDS to the world.
Well, that
does not hold up.
Specifically, this era of stand-up that we're talking about, like the late 80s and especially the early 90s, like you had jokes about women, you had gay jokes, and you had race jokes, and those
right.
Yeah, as far as making fun of people, those were the sweet spots.
And I have no problem with making jokes on any of these subjects, but I feel that as a society, you kind of have to evolve and try to make your jokes funny by not punching down. In my opinion, a good comedian punches up and attacks people who are higher up in social class, if you know what I mean. And so knocking someone down who's already on the ground is kind of a lazy joke, and also it's kind of sad to have to do that. Now, I'm not accusing Chris Rock of doing this intentionally. And the fact is, the rest of the film doesn't do that. I just had to mention that moment because now that I've criticized it, I'm going to talk about what I liked about the movie.
Okay.
What I liked about the movie is that it really feels like Chris Rock is opening up and trying to make a big film with all of his comedian friends. And this is not an auteur film. This is a film that is about the love of comedy. His character in the film is a comedian named Andre Allen, who's basically just a stand-in for Chris Rock. The character of Andre Allen is a comedian who had a big run of things in the early 2000s with a string of popular movies and was at the top of the world, and then decided that he wanted to start doing dramatic work because he felt that people weren't taking him seriously. And so he decides to do serious work in the form of a movie called Uprise, which is a film about the Haitian Revolution.
Okay, that in itself is a joke.
Yes, Uprise.
Not the Haitian Revolution. I mean, doing a movie like that because you want to do something serious.
Right,
and titling it Uprise.
Uprise
right.
with a Z, by the way.
Okay. Yeah.
And some of the funniest moments of Top 5 are these brief, 5-second glimpses at Uprise that you get throughout the film. Uprise is basically a movie about the Haitian Revolution was basically an instance on Haiti where a ton of white people were killed. and rightly so, I would argue, because they were
Owners.
slavers. But they really emphasize the "we're killing a lot of white people" kind of thing. And that's something that comes up that some people are like, did you really make this? Like, there are a lot of killing scenes in this movie, is a recurring joke that people have, and a recurring criticism. And that's a great running joke. And another thing that runs into it is his character.
Oh. What about his character?
Give him a second. He'll come back.
What's that?
Oh, you cut off for a second.
You said his character, and then you stopped.
His character is getting married the next day in this film. The film takes place over the course of one day, sort of the day of his bachelor party, and this journalist is kind of covering his day. Andre is making the big mistake of marrying a reality TV star.
Yeah.
And his entire life is being kind of catered, or not catered, curated for him.
Mm-hmm.
And this is sort of his last day where he gets to enjoy, life as himself. And he's going around and meeting up with some of his family, some of his friends, and his family and friends just happen to be pretty much every stand-up comedian you can come up with in Chris Rock's community. You have cameos from you have J.B. Smoove, you have Doug Stanhope, you have Jerry Seinfeld, Adam Sandler, Tracy Morgan, Cedric the Entertainer, Opie and Anthony, Whoopi Goldberg, Brian Regan, Louis Guzman.
Brian Regan. Now there's a name I haven't heard in fucking years.
I know.
He plays a radio guy, right? Like a producer or something.
Yeah, he's credited as engineer.
Yeah, he's the guy who's like, put a little stank on it.
Brian Regan is a comedian who, honestly, I've always liked his stuff, but he's just never really gotten a huge break. Very much kind of like a Louis C.K. character. He's always kind of been below the radar.
But he can make just about anything funny.
Absolutely.
Like a small line, like put a little stank on it.
Yeah, he basically plays a radio station DJ who is trying to get Andre Allen to be funny, and his character, Chris Rock's character, Andre Allen, has stopped telling jokes and has made it clear that he no longer wants to be funny, and that's sort of hampering his career because everyone sees him as hammy. And in fact, there's these throughout the film, no matter where he goes, you hear in the background someone go, "Yo, hammy!" Which is the ultimate drinking game, by the way. If you see this movie, drink every time you hear someone say hammy.
Okay.
You will be fucked up. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Okay, so there's sort of an autobiographical element to this film.
To an extent. Now, that said, there are a few changes. First of all, his character is an alcoholic. Chris Rock is pretty straight edge, actually. I don't even think he imbibes anymore at all, but I don't know whether he was ever into drugs to a major extent.
We never really hear about anything like that from him, so probably not. If he does, it's every once in a while. We don't really know, but it doesn't seem to be a big deal.
Right. But so that is something that complicates his character in the film, and the journalist he meets up with, he sort of starts falling for because she has a lot in common with him. And then, she turns out to not be everything that she said, which is a little bit of a iffy. It's one of those forced moments that you hear a lot of people complaining about right now, which is the liar revealed moment. It's a bit of a cliche.
What's the reveal?
Do you want me to spoil it?
Yes. Are you cool with that, Bill Leon?
Oh yeah.
Okay, spoiler alert.
Okay, spoiler alert. Who she is, and by the way, she's Rosario Dawson, so,
Yeah.
who cares who she is? She's Rosario Dawson. But no, who she is she's actually a film critic who has ripped Andre Allen's films apart. She writes under the pseudonym of a guy, though. So that's why he doesn't know that.
Right. But then why is she interviewing him?
Because she actually really respects him as a comedian. She has been kind of hoping for him to go back to his early stuff for a long time.
That seems really weird and obsessive.
It is, and that is kind of commented on.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Well, does he end up being with her, or does he just marry the vapid reality star?
It's pretty much your Hollywood ending kind of thing, you know.
Does he end up not being with anyone and just goes back to comedy?
They indicate, I don't think that, it's not a straight he gets the girl kind of movie, but they indicate pretty strongly that he's going to stick with her and go back to doing stand-up. Because the stand-up thing, he does get, probably the best scene in the movie is the scene where he goes up and does like a 5-minute Chris Rock routine at a comedy club, which is sort of this moment of power. The funniest part of the movie, actually, though, comes with a cameo, and I am not going to ruin this because I don't care who you are. You have to see this scene in the movie. DMX has a cameo, and it is the funniest. It is probably the single funniest moment of this year in any film that I've seen.
That's pretty funny. Okay.
And I'm not going to ruin it. I'm just going to say, find the scene. If you don't want to go to see the movie, find the scene, but definitely see the movie if you can, because within the context of the film, it just comes out of nowhere.
I'm gonna guess one of two things: DMX is impersonating Chris Rock's character, or DMX is impersonating an FBI agent, just like he did in real life.
You couldn't be further from the truth, and it's wonderful.
I just imagine Ken sitting in the theater watching DMX on screen, going, "That boy good."
What?
That's from Coming to America.
Oh, okay, all right.
That boy good.
The theater I saw it at had, I would say, it was a good mix of a good cultural mix, I will say, between African Americans, Latino, white people like me, and stuff. And so I really got a good idea of what played with the different audiences who were at the film, and it was fascinating, actually. Half the fun at the movie was finding out who laughed at what moments, and yeah, so that was something that I found interesting. Overall, I would say it's worth watching. I'm not sure I would see it in the theater necessarily, unless maybe a matinee.
Okay.
But I think it's a step forward for Chris Rock as a filmmaker. And I think that if next time he has a little bit more time to hone some of the softer edges. Another thing I do want to say, I actually want to compliment Adam Sandler because he actually managed to be, his scene in the movie was good, actually.
Okay.
And it's been a long time since I've seen Adam Sandler, just do something that didn't feel like a cash grab moment.
Well, you didn't get to see Men, Women, and Children.
No, I didn't get to see that, I guess.
Yeah, so he did okay in that.
Okay. I didn't see it, but point being, actually the second funniest part in the movie is Jerry Seinfeld's cameo, which I will go ahead and explain really quick. It's because it's something that no matter whether I explain it or not, it'll be funny. With DMX, the shock value is half the fun, but with the Jerry Seinfeld cameo, it's at Andre Allen's bachelor party, and a bunch of stand-up comedians are there, and Jerry Seinfeld's there, and the bachelor party is in a strip club.
Okay.
First of all, Jerry Seinfeld in a strip club is automatically kind of an interesting concept.
Who are these people?
What's the deal with tassels?
So Chris
Why
Rock.
can't you have sex in the champagne room?
So Chris Rock sits down with Adam Sandler and Jerry Seinfeld at the same table, and they're commenting on how both of them were talked to by their wives when their wives found out where they were going. And Adam Sandler, for instance, he said, "Yeah, my wife gave me 30 minutes and I'm out." and then Jerry Seinfeld makes this offhand comment about how, about how worried he was about being pickpocketed, and it's like, oh wow, okay, pickpocketed? That's kind of weird. And then like 10 minutes later, you see Jerry Seinfeld with his arms being held behind his back by a bouncer at the strip club, and insisting that he wasn't making advances. He didn't mean to touch her. She stole my wallet. It's just this moment of,
Is that a Seinfeld reference? My wallet's gone! My wallet's gone!
Yeah, remember that Seinfeld episode where a stripper stole Jerry's wallet?
Well, no, the doctor stole his dad's wallet.
I'll never forget when they implied that a dentist raped him.
Oh, and it's Bryan Cranston.
Or molested him at the
It's Walter White.
It's like, we like to share.
Actually, I heard a story, some buddies of mine, I think, maybe it was on a podcast, I don't remember, but somebody went to a strip club and like paid a stripper for a lap dance for someone else, and the stripper just walked away, so they had to go get the bouncer and like make her do her job. I just want to see Jerry Seinfeld be that guy. Excuse me, I paid good money for this.
For this lap dance, I want to feel a boner.
Oh, yeah. I will say I was half hoping and expecting there to be a champagne room joke, but there wasn't. So, I guess Chris Rock sort of sidestepped that, because a lot of people know the, No Sex in the Champagne Room song.
Now we know. Well, now we need a spin-off series called Comedians Doing Coke in Strip Clubs.
Oh, wow. Yeah, actually, maybe that could be Jerry Seinfeld's next series.
Maybe they could have... Who would you want to host that? Because Seinfeld wouldn't host that.
Who was the guy that hosted Insomnia? Dave Attell.
Dave Attell. Yeah, that's not a bad choice.
Yeah, he's someone who probably had his Actually, I would choose Greg Proops just because I'm not entirely certain that he's not doing cocaine. If you've ever heard his podcast, you get the feeling that he's still doing rails every once in a while. Well, and that's not an insult, because I rather love his podcast. It's a Monday tradition for me. Mm-hmm. So I'm done talking top 5. I just want to cover the other big release, and then I'll open the floor to you guys. Did either of you see Exodus: Gods and Kings?
Really? I'm surprised, Bill. I thought you would be there.
Really? Why would I be there?
You usually, you usually see all the big releases, and this was the big release for this.
Yeah, but I've had so many. Like, I think we discussed this a little bit the last podcast. I keep getting these screeners for award season, and so I've just been like, kind of wanting to not see a movie for a while. As much as I love movies, I'm kind of like, okay, I need a break, at least one day or 2 days where I don't.
Right. And yeah, I totally understand that.
So I was like, I picked the weekend where Exodus: Gods and Kings came to theaters. I was like, that's a good weekend to pick.
We live in a strange world where the Rugrats Passover special, which told this Exodus story,
is a much better adaptation
than almost any other attempt to film the Exodus story has failed, and it worked in the context of a half-hour children's special.
Well, it's funny you mention that, and this is branching off just slightly, so I'll make my point as quick as I can. I haven't seen the Rugrats Passover special in years, so I don't know, but you're immediately making me think of Mickey's Christmas Carol, how they managed to tell the whole Christmas Carol tale in about a half hour.
I had that on VHS back in the day. I should still have it somewhere.
Yeah.
I liked it. It was great.
Yeah, it is. And they managed to hit all the emotional notes of the story, and then they condense it. It's almost mind-blowing how condensed it is.
Mm-hmm. Actually, it's worth noting that the first filmed version of A Christmas Carol, the 1938-39 version, of it. Which
Really? It took them that long to do a Christmas Carol adaptation on film?
I believe that was the first. It may have been the first talkie version.
Okay.
I know that the version prior that was most well known was the radio version. So I'm actually looking it up right now to be sure. But the 1939 version is about 75 minutes, and it really does move along at a quick pace.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of other versions take their time. And don't get me wrong, I like a film that takes its time, but it does intrigue me that the story can be hit on and you can get all those emotional points and in a relatively rapid succession. Yeah, it looks like A Christmas Carol was adapted in silent films, but 1938. Actually, wait, no, it may not have been the first because I'm seeing. What is this? 1935. There was a film, a British film called Scrooge from 1935 that predates it.
Mm-hmm.
But it itself was also 78 minutes, so
there you go.
My point is still made, regardless of what we're talking about.
Now, when the Rugrats Passover special came out, I know that I've seen it, but at a certain point, like, the Rugrats just needed to cover every single fucking holiday they could because they have a Hanukkah special, they have a Kwanzaa special, they have an Easter special. Like, it just got, like, now I'm so cloudy with trying to remember which one specifically it was because, like, I keep thinking Passover. Like, I know I've seen it, but then I'm like, was there a menorah in there?
The Rugrats Passover special is basically just Exodus. It's the story of Moses, leading the Egyptians to freedom, or not the Egyptians, the Jewish slaves in Egypt.
Right, and Angelica plays Ramses, and he plays Moses, and some of the other friends, like Phil and Lil, or the Jews,
Mm-hmm.
and the grandpa is telling the story in the attic, or one of the is it the grandpa, or is it the other grandpa? Because there were two.
That's one of them tells the Hanukkah story. So again, they have too many goddamn holiday specials.
But they're stuck in the attic, but I really liked how they explained why they can't eat cookies during Hanukkah, and they're like, well, because because of this and the story, and we can't do it because they couldn't do it, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty creative way of doing that for kids, of telling them why you can't have cookies during this season if you're Jewish. That was pretty neat.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I rather enjoyed that. And so I just wanted to give a comparison. If you've never seen either the old version or the 50s version of Cecil B. DeMille did the Ten Commandments twice.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know that. It was done in 1956 and then in the 20s. 1923, yes. So, is a silent film. Both versions are, I think, very watchable epics, but also they're both kind of hard sits.
Yeah.
They're hard sits, but they're not impossible, and
I'm glad you said hard sits, by the way.
Yeah. This movie, though... Why?
Hard shits.
Because if you put an H in there, never
hard
mind.
shit.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
this movie... Well,
This movie's a hard shit.
Exodus, Gods,
might be
and
a hard
Kings was almost a hard shit. Not quite. It has some redeeming value to it, but I will argue that this is a movie that...
Let me ask you, did we really need Ridley Scott to amp up Moses? I mean, he amped up Robin Hood already.
Do we need Ridley Scott to do anything anymore?
We
Really?
did not need the gritty reboot of the Ten Commandments, and that's what we got, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I said about Noah. That's exactly what I said about
here's
Noah.
Here's the thing. Noah is a much more interesting film because it at least tried something different with the story.
It does, yeah. But, I mean, I still
I
think...
actually... I would watch Noah again, if only because I felt like there was a lot in the movie, and I feel like if I watched it again, I might gain some from it. Plus, I want to watch the film with the mindset that I set from our last conversation about it, which is, imagine if this is not actually set in the past, if this is set in the future.
Mm-hmm.
like a
Yeah.
dystopic, apocalyptic future. Now that would be interesting. But this movie, I have no interest to see again. If it was a movie that was on Netflix, I might have watched it once and then put it down.
Would you have even finished it?
I might have finished it. I might also have fallen asleep during it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, what's this shit with these characters being white? Fuck this.
They do darken the skin, because that's,
Well, okay. To be fair, they did that with Robert Forster. Remember that when he played like a terrorist, and they did it with a couple other actors. Then now that I think of it, like who played Genghis Khan?
Have you guys seen Adam Sandler's movie Click?
Yeah. Click, right? Yeah.
Rob Schneider's in brownface at the beginning of Click.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
That was supposed to be a joke, though. But
have
still,
you seen John Wayne and the Conqueror? The entire cast have their
God.
eyes artificially slanted.
Didn't they get radiation poisoning filming that?
Arguably, that movie killed more people than. I was about to make. I'm going to make a Blazing Saddles reference. It killed more people than Cecil B. DeMille, which ties us right into the Ten Commandments.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Do they have any kind of anything along the lines of Vincent Price's cameo in Ten Commandments? Is there anything like that in Exodus?
Yes, actually. Aaron
Really?
Paul has a cameo in the movie.
Nice.
Who?
Okay.
Aaron Paul.
Aaron
Jesse,
Paul, yeah. Jesse
Jesse
Pinkman.
from Breaking Bad.
Okay.
There's this scene in the movie where randomly you see Moses walking, and you see this slave being brutally flogged, and Moses asks the guy, why are you beating him? And why do you continue to beat him? And he says the slave keeps telling me he feels no pain. Pan down, you see Jesse Pinkman's face all scrunched up like he's been taking the pain. And he does have a few other appearances in the movie. It felt like he probably had a larger role that was maybe cut down in post. It's reduced to effectively a cameo because he really only has a couple lines in the beginning, and then he shows up here and there in later scenes.
Yeah, it sounds like something that was cut. Yeah.
It's definitely not like if you've ever seen The Greatest Story Ever Told, where John Wayne appears and he's a Roman century. He's a Roman century that observes Jesus. Well, that truly is the Son of God, Pilgrim.
It's like, what the fuck?
That is an awesomely bad epic if you ever have a chance to see it.
What was the movie again?
The Greatest Story Ever Told.
Greatest story ever told. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But as far as other characters who show up, John Turturro plays the father of Ramses. Ramses the First. And John Turturro is don't get me wrong, I think he did his damnedest, but it's a lot like Harvey Keitel in The Last Temptation of Christ, where it's that voice you cannot separate from it's an accent that is tied to modern America, and he's trying so hard to make himself not sound like an American, but it's just John fucking Turturro's voice. I mean, Harvey Keitel will never convince you that he is, an Israeli. Wait, in Last Temptation, wasn't he a Roman, or am I? Fuck it, doesn't matter.
I don't remember.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I saw that one, but Turturro is he does his best, but I smiled. Sigourney Weaver shows up and does fucking nothing. I don't even remember her talking. But other than that, Ben Kingsley has a sizable.
Of course.
He's a sizable role in the movie, and so I wouldn't call it a cameo.
What about John Hurt? Is John Hurt in this movie? It feels like a movie that John
should have
Hurt
been.
should be in. Yeah.
Yeah, he really should have been in it. But no, unfortunately. He would have been a great Ramses the First.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause, an aging, dying king. Here's the thing. Let me get into the story. I'm not gonna.
Do you really have to?
I'm not gonna bore you by summarizing the story. Everyone knows the basic Exodus story. But I will say this much. I think everyone knows that the most captivating and emotionally intriguing element in the Exodus story is the fact that Moses and Ramses II grew up together and considered each other brothers. That relationship was torn apart, and so it's basically you're watching as one brother goes against another, and that is an emotional thing that should have set the tone for some really powerful moments.
It worked for Prince of Egypt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really did.
Prince of Egypt worked. The only reason I give Rugrats Passover Special the edge to Prince of Egypt is those fucking songs.
And I agree with you. That if that movie had come out now, it wouldn't have any songs in it. They made the mistake of trying to jump on that Disney Renaissance bandwagon, especially because I think that was one of the first, if not the first, DreamWorks picture. Maybe
I think
Ants
it was
the first.
I think Prince of Egypt came first.
Okay.
But anyway.
And that's another thing, is that DreamWorks, it all has to do with Katzenberg leaving Disney, and then he's like, yeah, we got to make it like Disney. Okay, but anyway.
Joel Edgerton as Ramses and Christian Bale as Moses do their best with the material they have, but I think that there's a major problem in the direction department, and this continues my long-running issue with Ridley Scott as a filmmaker, in that he does not service a story very well. He can direct the scenery, he can make visuals, he can set a mood, but what he can't do is service a plot. If you've noticed, his most successful film, like the one that is most well regarded and doesn't really, there aren't any detractors really of Alien.
Right.
Even Blade Runner, which I would say is kind of the one that's most people would say is probably his greatest achievement of a film. There are still detractors of it, and I think rightly so. I think the narrative is a little screwy in that, but Alien works as a narrative because it doesn't really have one. It's a very basic story. Alien kills things. It's hard to fuck that up.
Blade Runner, I think, benefits from having two different cuts that.
Whoa! 2 different cuts.
There's like 5 or 4 or something here.
I'm not a big Blade Runner guy, so.
There are so many goddamn cuts.
Well, there you go. There's a cut to fit your taste.
Yeah, that is true. You can kind of choose what version you want to watch. I'm actually, as you mentioned that, I just pulled up the Wikipedia page to see how many versions there are of Blade Runner. Wikipedia has an entire entry for versions of Blade Runner. There are 7 major known versions of the film. The work print prototype version, which was the initial cut, the San Diego sneak preview version, the U.S. theatrical cut, the international theatrical release, the U.S. broadcast version, the director's cut, the final cut. Because the director's cut was not final enough. He had to do a final cut.
Did Roger Waters work on it?
I don't know. The final cut was completed on the 25th anniversary of the film, and it says here that it is the only version which Ridley Scott had complete artistic control, because he did not have control of the director's. Okay.
That doesn't make sense.
Anyway, needless to say, Exodus is definitely going to be a film that gets a extended version, knowing Ridley. And honestly, if the track record is in keeping, the director's cut might actually make the film a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
The Kingdom of Heaven extended cut, if you've ever seen it, improves it greatly. Kingdom of Heaven, I thought, was kind of a waste when I saw it in theaters. I saw the extended cut, and I can watch it. I have no problem watching it. It's not great, but it's probably, I would say it's a cut above Gladiator.
I can only think of that Red Letter Media sketch they did where it's like Prometheus, the special ridiculous edition, and it's like 18 discs, and he's sitting there like holding them up and shit.
Yeah.
Like, is that how far we've come with these different cuts, especially with Ridley Scott movies?
Yeah, honestly, I almost think Ridley Scott intentionally makes, cuts a movie to 2.5 hours for theatrical release because that's what the studios want these days, regardless of what it does to the movie. I have not seen the director's cut of The Counselor. Hopefully it completely excises Cameron Diaz. But point being, Joel Edgerton and Christian Bale do their best with the material that they can, but Bale's character, the way it's designed, is just boring. He's just, introspective. That's not an emotion, Ridley Scott.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing.
He's inquisitive.
No, he's not even inquisitive. He's introspective. The only saving grace from a pure performance perspective is Joel Edgerton, who really does give it his own. He plays a true sword and sandal epic villain because his character is not. He's a conflicted villain who is not all bad, not all good. There is a moment in the film where his character goes from turns cartoonishly villain-like. Once again, another editing issue. They don't give him enough time for his character to truly change over to hating the way he does, but the way he does it, he gets some great speeches, and he gets some great shouts out there. It's entertaining. So if anyone ever sits you down and makes you watch it, just watch Joel Edgerton, and you'll at least make it through the movie.
Okay.
So I'm tired of talking now. What have you guys seen?
Well, have you guys ever seen 1982's Annie?
Long time ago.
Okay. Well, yeah, me too. I haven't seen it in years. The remake is coming out, so I figured why not touch up on that. And I had a lot of fun with it, but there's also a lot to talk about. Ken, do you remember a character named Punjab?
Yes, that's one of the things I remember distinctly.
Let's talk about Punjab.
The name Punjab is that the Punjab region of India. It's a place. So the character, though.
Let me just get through the story real quick for those who don't know it. Little Orphan Annie was like a comic strip from the fucking 30s. Mm-hmm. In fact, A Christmas Story, that the whole Ovaltine thing is a Little Orphan Annie promotion, right?
Right.
I think it was in the 70s somebody decided to adapt it to a stage musical, and it's about Annie lives in this horrible orphanage with Miss Hannigan, and this woman shows up because the richest man in the world wants to be seen as sympathetic, so he has an orphan come live with him for 2 weeks, and it's Annie. And that guy is Warbucks. Punjab is Warbucks' main bodyguard in the film. He's this Indian dude that wears a turban and has unexplained magic when there's no magic anywhere else in this film. Just Punjab can make things fly and stuff because he's Indian. And I guess maybe they were thinking like a snake charmer kind of thing, but it comes off as kind of racist.
Yeah, Sikhism, which I'm guessing if he wears a turban, he's probably a Sikh, is a level. It's a type of mysticism religion, but certainly not magic. Mm-hmm. That's straight up racist.
there are several moments throughout the movie where he's making things levitate or just he's doing something magic.
By the way, the guy who plays Punjab is not in fact Indian. He is Jeffrey Holder, who, if you are a fan of James Bond films, you would recognize as Baron Samedi. He just died this year, sadly.
Oh, okay.
In October.
Oh. The other Warbucks bodyguard is an Asian man who, when he dances in the film, is doing all these karate kicks and stuff. Almost all of the ethnic elements are just so, and if this would make sense if it was made when the movie takes place, which is in the 40s, but it was made in the 80s. I'm like, how? And I mean, I know that kind of thing was still going on in film in the 80s, but like,
it's worth noting the movie was directed by John Huston.
Mm-hmm.
John Huston was in his 70s when the movie was made, and so yeah, that gives you an idea of why it owes so much to the old. The Man Who Would Be King from 1975 is the kind of movie you would see in the 1940s, but in the 70s. It's a great movie, though.
Mm-hmm. That was just one thing. That's one thing I do not think is going to make an appearance in the remake of Annie, is this sort of the racial insensitivities.
Well, considering the movie is... I almost hesitate to say this, but...
Are you going to say the black version? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I want to put it off on someone else. So I heard I was listening to the Doug Loves Movies podcast, and they were calling it Blanny.
Have they seen it?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, the director actually did an interview recently where he was like, "This isn't Black Annie, it's just Annie."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with half of that statement in that it's not Black Annie, but anyway, we're not talking about the remake. The remake's not out yet. So the thing about the what would you call it? The material of Annie is that, like, first of all, if you don't like show tunes, you're probably going to hate these songs. I would say that they're a cut of but I like Singing in the Rain, I like Rocky Horror, I like Little Shop of Horrors. I'm not a big I hated all the songs in that. I don't like The Music Man. I don't like, there's tons of musicals that I don't like because they're just too show-tuney. And I think Annie is almost a victim to that. But there's something to at least a handful of the songs that kind of bolster them up, in my opinion. And I will say, speaking of Rocky Horror, Tim Curry is one of the cast members in this, and Easy Street is one of the most fun musical numbers, if only just because Tim Curry's the one singing it.
It is hard to argue against Tim Curry. Tim Curry makes everything a little better.
But wait, you mean you didn't get to sing "I Do the Rock"?
No.
It's stimulating.
That it is.
Actually, it would be intriguing if Tim Curry sang, songs from Rocky Horror in Annie. Now, that would be intriguing. Dr. Frankenfurter is just there.
But okay, so speaking of Tim Curry, the adult cast in this film, at least your main three of Carol Burnett as Miss Hannigan, Albert Finney as Warbucks, and Tim Curry as Hannigan's brother Rooster, they are all fantastic. They're all hamming it up, having a blast, and being pretty hysterical. I mean, fucking Carol Burnett walking around pretending to be drunk for the whole movie. Like, how do you not love that? That's fucking hysterical.
And she's just a talented comedian, and I really do. I'll give that credit that her performance from the film is one of the few things that I do remember. I saw it a long time ago, and I actually probably saw it right about the same time that the Carol Burnett show was showing in reruns a lot on TV Land. So that's probably how I got into it originally.
Almost every scene that went by, I found myself riffing at the movie, like throwing out comments or jokes, because like I discovered Annie's kind of a riffable movie in a way, and it's kind of funny. Like, everything Albert Finney says is so over the top. Like when he first comes into the house and he finds out that there's an orphan there, he's like, "What is this?" Like, he's all like so over the top with it. It's a fucking blast.
If Jamie Foxx is like that, the movie might be interesting. What is this?
It's some shit like that. Basically, really, what I wanted to relay is that I went in kind of expecting to not enjoy watching the original again, but I actually surprisingly had a lot of fun with it. I think at some point, and not anytime soon, but we should consider commentarying this, because like I said, I found myself constantly making jokes at the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's worth noting that Aileen Quinn, who plays Annie in the movie, was nominated for a Razzie for Worst Supporting Actress.
That's so weird because she's not bad. She's not. I mean, I would say she's a cut above the other child actors in the movie. I mean, not that they're terrible, but like I don't know. And maybe it has to do with the fact that A, it takes place in the 40s, and B, it was directed by a 70-year-old man. But it's sort of like when you see like community theater people trying to portray a different era and like with dialogue and the way they talk and that kind of thing. And it's just like, no, I don't believe this. Like, especially with the little kids. The girl that plays Annie, I don't think that's warranted a Raspberry Award nomination. I don't think she was bad. I don't think she was great, but not bad.
Well, on the flip side, Quvenzhané Wallis, who plays the new Annie, has been nominated for a Golden Globe.
Really?
For that role, yeah. So apparently, she does really good in it.
Well, she got a lot of credit for her work a couple of years back in the
Beasts of the Southern Wild.
Yeah, Beasts of the Southern Wild.
Yes. Well, speaking of which, that is next up on our docket as sort of pre-release trailer talk on the remake. Do you guys have anything to say about it?
About the trailer for Annie?
The trailer looks...
It looks like it's generically fun.
I will say this, it's in keeping with a lot of other musicals in that they go out of their way to show as little of the singing as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed that, but most musicals these days are trying to avoid the fact, keep the audience from recognizing completely that you are going to watch a musical.
Mm-hmm.
It was impossible with Les Miserables for them to do that because, there's talking. No talking. In the movie, it's just singing.
Mm-hmm.
Sing talking. I'm going to sing talk to you. Yeah, that was that.
I'll never forget Russell Crowe doing that. And,
God.
And it's like, dude, it's Russell Crowe. This guy can't... He's not a good musician. He's like
and I'm Schwaber!
He's like one of the worst musicians, as a matter of fact.
Well, I'm not going to talk about his musicianship, but his voice. Certainly,
his voice is okay. But, well, no, it's not that good. Yeah, I was gonna say it was okay, but
it was
it was there.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say like Russell Crowe, his voice works for like rock music, but not like opera,
acoustic, or opera or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, but the trailer for Annie, it was cute, I guess. It wasn't, something that's going to make me want to really see it in the theater, but I might actually end up seeing it just because.
Same here. I might end up seeing it if I have time, just because.
The GOP made it available.
Right, but I'm partially a fan of, not partially, I am a fan of Quvenzhané Wallis ever since Beasts of the Southern Wild, and I'd be more than happy to support any movie that she's in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I would agree with that.
Okay.
So, with that said, what else have you guys seen recently?
Oh, I watched Bad Santa this morning, which, in fact, and that's something. It was a lot of it had to do with you guys talking it up on Pubcast Past when we would talk about Christmas movies.
You had never seen it before?
No, I had seen it. I saw it when it came out, and I wasn't that thrilled with it.
That was my reaction when I saw it in the theater. I didn't know what to make of the movie. I knew I liked it, but I didn't know how much of a classic it would end up being for me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like I haven't touched it in years. I may have seen a scene here and there on television, but again, that was on television. It was edited for content. It's on Netflix streaming right now for those interested. But yeah, I popped it on this morning, and I had intended to go to sleep a lot earlier, but I sat up and finished the whole movie.
I actually, my sound cut out, guys. What movie are you referring to?
Bad Santa.
Oh yeah, just last night I have the badder Santa cut on DVD, the unrated cut, which really only adds one or two scenes, but I think they're worthy scenes.
Oh, like when he goes into that guy's mansion and breaks his toilet, eats his food, steals his money.
And I'm pretty sure the you ain't gonna shit right for a week scene is a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what my dad's favorite scene in that movie is when the guy comes up to him and goes, "I'm not gay."
That's hilarious. Yeah, that's fucking hysterical.
Because because it brings to mind such a backstory that you're never privy to. Like, dude, was this guy raped by a Santa?
No. He asked the guy if he forgot to take his meds, and he says yes.
Yeah.
That could have been part of it, but you also got to imagine what was the instigating incident in this guy's life.
Well, what really adds to that for me is that it's Samir from Office Space.
Yeah.
Right. Ass clown.
I almost wonder if him saying ass clown was meant to be kind of a nod to the fact that he was in Office Space, even though his character didn't use that term. You know, no talent ass clown is said by Michael Bolton in Office Space. So.
Back up in your ass with the resurrection.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, I rather enjoy Bad Santa. It's not perfect, but I think it's.
I think it's damn near perfect in my opinion.
I haven't seen the unrated cut.
The unrated cut is my favorite of the versions.
Yeah,
and, it really does.
The one they have on Netflix right now is just the theatrical cut of the movie,
which itself is not bad. It is actually worth noting that Bad Santa is kind of a milestone cinematically for me because it was the last year that the movie theater near me was still using film projectors, and I actually learned the hard way about what happens when a film projector breaks down because right at about the scene with Samir from Office Space, the screen suddenly froze on one single frame, and then I saw the burn through where it's like you see the celluloid just dissolve away.
Yeah.
And very shortly after that, the theater just decked themselves out with digital projectors.
Damn.
Yeah, but so that's sort of a little personal milestone for me. Because I had to sit there for 15 minutes while they rethreaded the film, and then they started 15 minutes earlier, so I rewatched a bunch of stuff. Oh man, and I saw that movie with my family, by the way.
That's not bad. I once saw Next Friday with my mom in the theater, and she was like mad that I took her to see that.
I watched Bubba Hotep with my dad and his girlfriend, which doesn't sound that bad, but remember, the first 10 minutes is a monologue about how his dick doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. Believe it or not, I had my parents watch that movie, and neither of them like typically horror movies or fantasy of any kind. They loved the movie.
Nice.
Some kind of Bubba Hotep or
something. I think the reason why it worked for them is because while those are elements of the film, they're not taken seriously, and really what the film's about is getting old. And that's what's fascinating about it. Although I will admit I cannot wait to see Bubba Nosferatu and the Curse of the She-Vampires.
If
that ever gets set.
I can only fucking hope. Which, I guess they're not going to bring Ossie Davis. Well, yeah, Ossie Davis died in Bubba Hotep, but they're talking about...
He also died in real life, too.
They're talking about having Paul Giamatti play Elvis's manager, which sounds infinitely fascinating.
It would make sense, too, because Paul Giamatti was in John Dies at the End, and so he's, the director probably has gotten that connect. And Giamatti was one of the more fascinating characters in John Dies at the End, too, so... He turns out to be... Oh, man, that blew my mind when it's he turns out to be dead. That was ridiculous. Spoiler, by the way. So while we've been talking, I just have to bring this up because this is movie news that is kind of baffling me. Let me just read this article, and I want to hear what you guys think.
Okay.
Breaking Bad's Aaron Paul will take on the role of Luke Skywalker in director Jason Reitman's one-night-only live read of The Empire Strikes Back this Thursday.
I saw that on my Facebook news feed, and
I actually got no problem with this. Jason Reitman's been doing these one-night-only things for a while with other movies too.
With J.K. Simmons
as Darth Vader, right?
Which
I advocate that.
Having seen Whiplash, he can be a menacing motherfucker. In fact, I would argue in my opinion, J.K. Simmons in Whiplash may be my
what's the
favorite
term?
villain.
He says, "Are you something or dragging?" What is it?
What's that?
J.K. Simmons. He's talking about drumming. He's like, "Are you rolling or dragging?" And the kid's like, "I don't know." He's like, "Are you rolling or dragging?" And then he answers him. He's like, "So you do know the difference?"
I think I forget the term. It's like a technical term, but it's basically he's asking whether the person's whether he's drumming too fast or too slow is the easiest way to put it. And
it's one of the few scenes I've had the privilege of seeing from the film because it's so goddamn hard to fucking locate.
Yeah, I think the release of this was botched.
It got a bad release, yeah.
Really unfortunate. But actually, one of my favorite lines in the film that Simmons says, he's like, either you're deliberately out of tune and sabotaging my band, or you don't know you're out of tune, and that's much worse. And the way he says it, it's just like so much bile in his voice. He sound like he's gonna friggin' choke a bitch. And in fact, at one point he almost does. So yeah. So any other movies we've seen recently, or have we reached?
I think we've reached the apex of.
Right. We do got to sort of speculate on Hobbit 3 a little bit.
Oh, I did see that. I saw Hobbit 3 the other day.
How? Clearly, it was a fascinating movie because you haven't mentioned it.
Oh, I'm sorry. It just didn't come to me. Like I thought maybe we were going to hold off on that.
Oh, yeah, I saw something too. I totally forgot, but go on.
Well, I caught a press screening of it, and it was in 3D, and I kept thinking, is this going to be high frame rate? And it wasn't. It was just standard, 3D, which was fine. The screen was relatively bright, so it wasn't that bad. It starts literally right where the second movie, Desolation of Smaug, ended, and
with them flying, yeah.
Yeah, no, it starts right when the city is preparing to evacuate, and the Smaug is about to attack, and Bard does his thing, and and that's like the first 15 minutes of the film, and then the title comes up, the Battle of the Five Armies. I was like, oh, okay, that it kind of felt like an anticlimactic beginning, because I was like, that's arguably where you should have ended the first movie. and technically they should have, but I kind of like the ending of the second movie, the Desolation of Smaug. But that's a different topic. I know a lot of people are kind of like, oh my god, but
that would be if we just ended our podcast right here, like mid sentence.
I guess
I almost hit stop just
for the joke, right?
Yeah.
But no, Battle of the Five Armies, it's at its best when it's dealing with issues like Thorin and his greed that starts to come up. It's hinted at in Desolation of Smaug, but it's really brought to the forefront in Battle of the Five Armies that he's being taken with dragon sickness. And when it's dealing with those issues, the movie's like really strong.
Wait,
and then
whoa, dragon sickness?
That's what Tolkien calls it.
You got to explain, what is dragon sickness?
It's basically when you get overcome with greed because of gold and stuff. Basically what Smaug had. Smaug was like all greedy and everything, so that's kind of what Thorin has become a little bit, and he starts making all these rash decisions and everything. He's willing to go to war and all that, and the movie acts more or less as a it is a prequel to the Lord of the Rings, but it didn't have to be slavish to Lord of the Rings. It could have just been its own, kind of thing.
But it was.
It was slavish, and it was something. It's really weird. The movie has a balance to it, where at times it's one thing, at other times it's another thing, and then at other times it's even. If that makes any sense, like tonally, it feels like it's a Lord of the Rings prequel, tonally it feels like it's a Hobbit movie, and then tonally it feels like it's trying to balance both of those at the same time.
That's how I felt about the second one.
Yeah, that's probably just the entire series and Peter Jackson's directing of them, but overall, I'd say I had a blast watching it. I was never really into the Lord of the Rings stuff beforehand, but I really kind of got into it. And Jackson's handling of it, he's definitely a filmmaker who knows what he's doing and knows how to compel you to watch the screen and pay attention. I probably would see it again, honestly. I wouldn't say it's like the greatest movie ever. I wouldn't say it's even 5 out of 5 stars, but it's very entertaining.
All right. Well, that's a good early review then. I'm intrigued by it. You know what? Okay, I have one more question. Is Stephen Fry in it anymore at all?
Yeah, he is. He's in the beginning.
Okay. I was hopeful that he at least would have, because I'm a huge Stephen Fry fan, and I was a little disappointed with how little he got to be.
Well, he gets even littler amount of time in this one.
Oh, okay.
But
more than Stephen Colbert ever got, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, unfortunately, and I recognized Stephen Colbert when I first saw Desolation. I was like, oh my God, Stephen Colbert, that's so cool.
You know that, by the way, did either of you watch Stephen Colbert's interview with Smaug?
No, I heard about it though.
It's online. Look it up. It's hilarious. Benedict Cumberbatch voices Smaug as Smaug talks with Stephen about politics. Apparently, Smaug is a Tea Partier.
Yeah.
I'm not really a fan of the Affordable Care Act, I guess.
So, Bill, you said you saw a movie.
I saw Horrible Bosses too.
You don't sound too thrilled about it.
It wasn't as bad as I expected it to be, and I will preface by saying I was kind of drunk when I watched it, so it probably got more chuckles out of me than it deserved. But this is very much like the Hangover 2 syndrome of like, let's do the same shit, who cares, that lazy. I will say it's better than Dumb and Dumber 2, but that's not a fucking high bar to reach.
Yeah.
With Dumb and Dumber 2, they took 20 years to make that piece of shit. That's why it so offended me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Horrible Bosses 2 had a quicker turnaround.
Yeah.
Much quicker.
There's not a whole lot to say about it. I will say there is something to say about it, actually. Chris Pines is trying his ass off. Chris Pines is really on his game, trying to be funny and make people laugh. And I'm sure the other cast is too, but it just seems everybody else is a little bit laid back with it. There's like, it's Horrible Bosses too. Who gives a shit?
It's a payday for them, is what it is.
It kind of seems that way. Bateman, Charlie Day, and Jason Sudeikis still have chemistry. They're still funny together, but they did that thing that they do with sequels, where they're like, let's amplify their personalities. Let's take that obnoxiousness to the next level.
Yeah.
There's really not too much to say about it. It's very similar to your sort of run-of-the-mill comedy sequel in that it doesn't try anything new. It doesn't take the characters to a different place. It's just more of the same kind of.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that said, then I think that we've come to a suitable end for this episode. Now, I wanted to say that I would like to do an episode next week, a sort of Christmas-themed episode. I don't know if it'll be Wednesday or maybe earlier in the week if you guys have the ability to show up maybe Tuesday. We'll pound out those details later, though. But also, look forward to a Christmas episode of the music podcast that Bill and I have going, Told the Truth, in which we'll be covering Jethro Tull's Christmas album.
Yep.
All right. Because that exists, and it's actually not terrible. It's interesting. So.
All right. Take care.
Take care.